The pectoral muscles are a fascinating muscle group. When flexed, they splinter into an explosion of fibers that ripple and undulate, unlike any other muscle group. According to Mike Mentzer, it wasn't until he won the Mr. America that his pecs finally took on a thicker appearance. Prior to this, he believed that his pecs were his greatest physical shortcoming. But prior to the America, Mike spent some time analyzing the situation and came to some very revealing insights. He noticed how others who, like him, possessed disproportionately large triceps usually had deficient pecs. Recognizing that the triceps were very directly involved with most conventional pectoral exercises, it occurred to him that he was performing his chest exercises in such a fashion that most of the stress was being directed onto his triceps instead of his pecs. As a result, his triceps were becoming outrageously developed, while his pecs had lagged behind. According to a study by Madsen and McLaughlin that was published in the Journal of Biomechanics in 1982, when the pectoralis major was involved at the beginning of a bench press, by the time the weight reached the top or arms locked position, the experimenters found, quote, triceps involvement is so large near the end or top of a bench press that it is the limiting factor in the lift in this region, close quote. And the top position, which is the one where the humerus is closest to the sides, is the one position where full contraction of the pecs is possible. But it is also in this position that the triceps have usurped most of the work. It became clear to him that the triceps were a weak link in the working of the pectorals. Since the triceps are smaller than the pecs, they tended to give out in many exercises before the pecs did, thus preventing his pecs from ever being fully stressed. The way he got around the weak link of the triceps, which had been preventing thorough pec workouts, was to isolate his pecs first with an exercise like a cable crossover or dumbbell fly, where the triceps were not directly involved. After carrying that exercise to a point of failure, he would then proceed immediately to a second exercise that involved the triceps along with the pecs, like incline presses or dips. By going to the second exercise immediately, with zero rest time after the first exercise, the triceps were temporarily stronger than the pecs, which were in a state of exhaustion from the first isolation exercise. Thus, he reasoned, he would no longer be limited by the weak link of the triceps. Doing both exercises in rapid succession to a point of complete failure rendered his pecs completely exhausted. Something else he discovered in his analysis of his pec training was the importance of keeping the elbows pointed away from the body. According to Mike, quote, as the pecs are attached to the humerus, upper arm bone, and along the sternum, it is their kinesiological function to bring the humerus from a position away from the body into and across the sternum. The most effective chest exercises, then, are those that involve the greatest range of motion while causing the pec to fulfill its natural function. Exercises like the cable crossover, which brings the upper arm from a position almost behind the plane of the torso to a position over the midline of the sternum, are most effective. Close quote. By contrast, exercises like the regular flat bench press he discovered, which provide a range of motion of less than 90 degrees, stopping the humerus well short of the midline, were the least effective. Mike Mentzer preferred to use an incline bench for performing the compound movement, owing to the greater range of motion the arms must travel through when performing an incline press as compared to pressing on a flat bench. In a research study published in the Scandinavian Journal of Medicine and Science and Sports in June 2021, in which a systematic review and meta-analysis of the scientific evidence was examined, the researchers concluded, quote, full range of motion resistance training is more effective than partial range of motion to maximize muscle strength and lower limb muscle hypertrophy. Likewise, functional performance appears to be favored by the use of full range of motion exercises. Close quote. Incorporating these new ideas into his chest training rapidly brought about a transformation in the appearance of his pecs, which now became thicker from the clavicle to the nipple and striated from the sternum to their convergence and insertion on the bicipital ridge of the humerus. Here is the chest routine that Mike recommended to his personal training clients that incorporates all of his training beliefs along with the implementation of the facts concerning the anatomy and kinesiology of the pecs. The first exercise in the pre-exhaustion sequence is either cable crossovers or dumbbell flies. Remember that the idea here is to isolate the pecs with the first exercise that preserves the triceps muscle as much as possible. If you have access to machinery that totally isolates the pecs with absolutely no stress at all directed onto the triceps, that's great. Most trainees, however, are limited to barbells and dumbbell, which are sufficient. With dumbbell flies, concentrate on using the pecs to move the weight, and be especially careful not to press out the weights. When performing the dumbbell flies, keep the elbows directed out and away from the torso. Don't allow the bells to stretch much further than below the plane of the torso, and as they come up to the top position, they should meet above the face. Use a weight that allows approximately 6 to 10 reps to a point of momentary muscular failure. Occasionally, once every third or fourth pec workout, if you happen to have a training partner on hand, have him assist in a couple of forced reps once you reach positive failure by applying a little upward pressure to the elbows after you have reached failure. Don't let him make it easy for you, though. His assistance should enable you to barely make the rep. Then proceed immediately to the incline press with either a barbell or dumbbells, or a universal bench press using a shoulder-width grip, or even dips with the elbows directed out. Choose one of the aforementioned exercises and perform it immediately after the first exercise listed. According to Mike, quote, "When I say immediately after the first exercise, I mean literally 0 rest time. After 3 seconds, the pecs will have recovered up to 50% of their available strength. And since it is our intention with the second exercise to work the pecs while they are totally exhausted from the first isolation exercise so that the triceps will be temporarily stronger, even a slight delay between the exercises will drastically reduce the productivity of this routine." Close quote. If you happen to have chosen the incline press for the second exercise, then make sure that the weight has been set up in advance so you can jump immediately onto the incline bench without delay. Perform 1 to 3 reps until failure here. If using a barbell, have a training partner standing by. Otherwise, it is better to do these presses in a Smith machine or on an incline press machine, so that you can go to failure without worrying about getting pinned under the weight. For some bodybuilders, the pecs come easy, and often there is a tendency to even overdevelop them. This routine is short, intense, but very effective, and helped Mike and his clients tremendously. Some have inquired why Mike didn't recommend more exercises for the chest muscles, since there are so many others available. The reason is non-contiguous innervation. The pectorals are serviced by a common tendon of insertion, while innervation of the pectoralis major comes from the lateral pectoral nerves and medial pectoral nerves. Lateral and medial pectoral nerves C5 to T1, to be precise. When sufficient weights are employed, the kind that will see you reach a state of failure somewhere between 6 and 10 repetitions, you will have activated all available fibers in the pectoral muscles. Consequently, there is no need to reactivate and re-stimulate the fibers that you have already recruited and stimulated with the exercise Mike has recommended. The fact that the upper and lower pecs are simultaneously activated when performing a compound chest movement, such as bench presses or incline bench presses, was revealed in a study by Barnett et al., published in the Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research in 1995. The researchers concluded that, quote, "the clavicular head of the pectoralis major was no more active during the incline bench press than during the horizontal one," close quote. Warm-up needs will vary among individuals according to age, existing condition, and of course, the temperature of the gym you work out in. Keep in mind, too, that the first few reps of this high-intensity, low-force program serve as a further warm-up. The guiding principle here is perform the minimal amount of exercise required to achieve an actual warm-up. Why only 1 set per exercise? Simply because 1 set has been established as being sufficient to stimulate muscle growth.
It's like when you throw the switch to turn on a light. Once you've thrown the switch, you're confident that the electrical mechanism is in motion. You don't stand there all day flipping the switch up and down, do you?
Moreover, each additional set represents an additional energy expenditure to recover from. The more sets you perform, the longer it takes to recover. Precision was a big thing with Mike, who believed in doing the precise amount of exercise necessary to do the job, as any more than that was unnecessary and represented needless time spent in the gym.